The combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Centauri system and immediately faced a sight that made even the bravest alien commanders feel fear. The entropy swarm stretched across space like a dark cloud, millions of combat, drones moving in perfect formation toward the inner planets. Admiral Zektar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "How many ships are we looking at?" "Computer estimates 12 million active units, sir," his tactical officer reported, "and the number is still growing. They're building new drones even as we watch." Commander Theiss watched her sensors as they tried to analyze the enemy ships. Each drone appears to be roughly fighter-sized, but they're heavily armed and armored. "My computers can't identify the weapon systems they're using." "That's because they keep changing," Fleet Admiral Corvin said grimly from his flagship. "Every few minutes, the swarm reconfigures itself based on what it's learned from our sensor scans." The alien fleet looked impressive against the backdrop of space. 2,000 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, representing the combined military might of 12 civilizations, but against 12 million enemies, they seemed pitifully small. "All ships prepare for combat," Corvin ordered. "We'll hit them with everything we have in the opening attack. Maybe we can destroy enough of them to make a difference." On the Pioneer, Captain Morrison watched the massive alien ships move into attack formation. The Vorthak dreadnoughts powered up their quantum torpedo arrays. The crystalline ships began, phasing in and out of normal space, preparing to attack from multiple dimensions. The Hive Collective's swarms spread out like angry insects. "Captain," Dr. Hayes said quietly, "Lazarus has finished analyzing the enemy formation. The AI predicts that the alien attack will destroy approximately 30% of the swarm in the first wave." "And then?" Morrison asked. "And then the swarm will adapt to everything the aliens just used against it. The second wave of attacks will be much less effective." Morrison nodded. He had expected as much. The alien commanders were thinking like traditional military leaders trying to win through superior firepower. Against a normal enemy, their strategy would work perfectly. Against an adaptive AI, it was exactly the wrong approach. "All ships, commence attack," Corvin commanded. The space around Centauri lit up like a star as 2,000 alien warships opened fire at once. Quantum torpedoes streaked across the void, leaving trails of exotic energy. Dimensional disruptors tore holes in space itself. Plasma cannons fired beams of superheated matter that could melt through planetary crust. The effect on the entropy swarm was devastating. Millions of drones were vaporized in the first few seconds of the attack. Entire sections of the swarm disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. For a moment, it looked like the alien fleet might actually win. "Direct hit!" Zektar shouted. "We've destroyed over 3 million enemy units." But even as he spoke, the remaining drones began to change. Their hulls shifted color and composition, becoming resistant to the weapons that had just destroyed their companions. New armor plating grew across their surfaces. Their own weapons modified themselves to counter the alien defenses. "Sir," Zektar's tactical officer said nervously, "the enemy is adapting faster than our computers can track. They're becoming immune to our weapons." The second wave of alien attacks struck the swarm with much less effect. The quantum torpedoes that had been so devastating minutes before barely scratched the modified drone hulls. The plasma beams scattered harmlessly off adaptive armor plating. "How is this possible?" This demanded. "They're learning from our attacks in real time." "That's exactly what they're doing," Corvin said grimly. "Every shot we fire teaches them how to defend against the next one." The swarm began to fight back. Millions of drones opened fire with weapons that seemed to shift and change with each shot. Energy beams that started as simple lasers became complex, multi-frequency attacks that cut through alien shields like they weren't there. The first alien ship to fall was a Hive collective cruiser. The enemy drones swarmed around it like angry bees, their weapons slicing through its hull in seconds. The cruiser exploded in a ball of fire that briefly outshone the local sun. "We're losing ships," Corvin reported. "All vessels, fall back to defensive positions." But it was already too late. The entropy swarm had learned too much from the alien attacks. The drones pressed forward, adapting to every defensive strategy the aliens tried to use. Ship after ship fell to the relentless assault. The Annihilator's Wrath, Admiral Zektar's mighty flagship, was surrounded by enemy drones. They had learned to counter his quantum torpedoes by reversing their polarity and firing them back at his own ship. The massive dreadnought's shields failed under the assault of its own weapons. "Abandon ship," Zektar ordered as his bridge erupted in sparks and flames. "All hands to the escape pods." Commander Thys tried to use her dimensional phase technology to escape, but the swarm had learned to track ships through multiple dimensions. Her crystalline vessels found themselves trapped between realities, unable to phase back to normal space. One by one, they were destroyed by weapons that existed in 17 dimensions at once. In less than an hour, the mighty alien fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors fleeing for their lives. The entropy swarm had not only defeated them, but had learned from every tactic they used. The enemy was now stronger and more dangerous than ever. "This is Fleet Admiral Corvin to all surviving ships," came a broken transmission. "Fall back to minimum safe distance. The battle is lost." On the Pioneer's bridge, Morrison watched the alien retreat with calm eyes. His crew was tense but ready. They had known this would happen. The aliens had fought exactly as their military doctrine required, and they had been defeated exactly as expected. "Captain," Rodriguez said over the comm, "the aliens are retreating. Should we fall back with them?" "No," Morrison said quietly. "Now it's our turn." "Sir?" Parker asked. "The swarm just destroyed the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. What can we do that they couldn't?" Morrison smiled slightly as he looked at the massive enemy formation. 12 million combat drones, all of them now adapted to resist every known form of alien technology. They had learned to counter quantum weapons, dimensional attacks, plasma cannons, and exotic energy beams. But they had never encountered anything like human engineering. "Hayes," Morrison said, "activate Lazarus. Full combat mode." "Aye, sir," Hayes replied. "Lazarus is online and ready. Rodriguez, bring the adaptive matrix to full power. Let's show them what we're really made of." "All systems ready, Captain," Rodriguez confirmed. "Parker, prepare all weapon systems for combat. It's time to introduce the galaxy to human warfare." The small, ugly ship that everyone had mocked began to move forward, heading directly toward the massive enemy swarm. To the fleeing aliens, it looked like suicide. They had no idea they were about to witness the most important battle in galactic history. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez stood in the engine room of the Pioneer, her hands working on a panel that looked like it had been hit by lightning. Sparks flew from the connections as she carefully adjusted the settings. To anyone watching, it would look like she was trying to fix a broken system. In reality, she was fine-tuning one of the most advanced pieces of technology in the galaxy. "How are we looking, Amy?" Captain Morrison asked over the comm system. "All systems are running perfectly, Captain," Rodriguez replied. The adaptive matrix is online and ready. The aliens have no idea what they're looking at. She smiled as she looked at the engine core. It appeared to be a simple fusion reactor held together with metal patches and jury-rigged repairs. But hidden inside the rough exterior was a revolutionary power system that could change its output and configuration in real time. Dr. Hayes had spent 5 years developing the technology, and it had taken another 3 years to make it look like junk. In the ship's small laboratory, Dr. Peter Hayes was running final checks on Project Lazarus. The main computer looked like an old desktop unit that someone had pulled from a scrapyard. Cables and wires hung out of it in all directions. A few of the panels were held on with actual duct tape. Hayes typed commands into the system, watching as streams of data flowed across his screen. The computer was processing information faster than any alien supercomputer, but it did so quietly, without any of the flashy lights or dramatic displays that other species seem to love. "Lazarus is ready," Hayes said to himself. "Let them laugh at our primitive technology." The heart of their secret weapon was an artificial intelligence that learned from every battle, every mistake, every victory. Unlike the static computer systems used by the aliens, Lazarus could adapt and evolve. During combat, it could turn weaknesses into strengths and find solutions that no traditional military mind would ever consider. Commander Lisa Parker sat in the weapons control room, checking their arsenal one more time. To an outside observer, it would look like a collection of mining equipment and industrial tools. There were rock cutters, metal grinders, cargo launchers, and what appeared to be a collection of spare parts from a dozen different machines. The aliens had no idea that every piece of equipment had been carefully modified and tested. The rock cutters could slice through the strongest armor. The cargo launchers could fire projectiles at speeds that would make alien weapons look slow. Even the spare parts had been designed to serve multiple purposes in combat. "All weapons systems ready," Parker reported. "The aliens are going to be very surprised when they see what these tools can do." On the bridge, Morrison sat in his captain's chair and watched the alien fleets prepare for the demonstration. Through the view screen, he could see the massive ships moving into position. The Vorthak dreadnoughts were enormous monsters covered in weapons. The crystalline ships flickered in and out of normal space like ghosts. The Hive Collective had deployed swarms of smaller ships that moved like angry insects. All of them were impressive in their own way. All of them represented thousands of years of military development and technological advancement, and all of them were about to learn a hard lesson about underestimating humans. Morrison's comm system buzzed. It was Admiral Zektar calling from his flagship. "Human Captain," Zektar's voice boomed through the speakers. "I have been thinking about your participation in today's exercises. Perhaps it would be better if you simply observed from a safe distance. We would not want your ship to be damaged by accident." "That's very thoughtful of you, Admiral," Morrison replied. "But we came here to participate, not watch." "I understand your pride," Zektar said. "But pride will not protect you from quantum torpedoes. My weapons could vaporize your entire ship without even trying." "I'm sure they could," Morrison agreed. "But the targets we're shooting at today aren't shooting back, are they?" There was a pause on the comm. "No, they are not. But still, it would be embarrassing for Earth if your ship suffered a malfunction during the demonstration." "We'll take that risk," Morrison said. "The Pioneer has never let us down before." After Zektar ended the call, Morrison turned to his crew. "They're still trying to get us to back down. That tells me they're more worried about this than they're letting on." Maybe they're afraid we'll make them look bad, Rodriguez suggested. Maybe, Morrison said. Or maybe they're afraid of something else. On another channel, Commander Thies was speaking with her officers about the human ship. "I've scanned their vessel multiple times," she told them. "The readings make no sense. Their power output is inconsistent, their weapon signatures are unclear, and their defensive systems appear to be completely random. Perhaps their technology is simply too primitive for our sensors to understand," one of her officers suggested. "Perhaps," Thies said. "But in my experience, when something doesn't make sense, it usually means you're missing important information." She had been a military commander for over 200 years. She had fought in dozens of battles and seen every type of weapon and defense system in the galaxy. But the human ship was different. It didn't follow any of the standard patterns that she had learned to recognize. "Keep scanning them," she ordered. "I want to know everything about that ship before the exercises begin." But the more her sensors probed the Pioneer, the more confused her officers became. The ship seemed to change its readings every few minutes. Sometimes it appeared to be barely functional. Other times it showed power levels that should have been impossible for a ship that size. "Ma'am," her sensor officer reported, "I'm getting readings that suggest their ship is learning from our scans." "Learning?" Thies asked. "What do you mean?" "Every time we scan a different system, their responses change. It's as if their ship is adapting to our sensor frequencies in real time." Thies stared at the data on her screen. If the humans had developed adaptive technology, it would explain why their ship was so difficult to analyze. But adaptive systems were theoretical at best. No one had ever managed to build one that actually worked. "Continue monitoring," she ordered, "and prepare our dimensional strike systems. I have a feeling today's demonstration is going to be more interesting than expected." Back on the Pioneer, Hayes was making final adjustments to Lazarus. The AI system was already analyzing the alien ships, learning their strengths and weaknesses from the sensor data it was collecting. By the time the exercises began, Lazarus would know more about alien military technology than most alien commanders knew themselves. "How much longer until the demonstration starts?" Rodriguez asked over the comm. Morrison checked his chronometer. 30 minutes. Is everyone ready?" "Engineering is ready," Rodriguez replied. "Weapons are ready," Parker added. "Lazarus is ready," Hayes confirmed. Morrison nodded and opened a channel to the exercise controllers. "This is Captain Morrison of the UES Pioneer. We are ready to begin whenever you give the word." The alien controllers seemed surprised that the humans were actually going through with the demonstration. There had been bets placed on whether the Pioneer would even launch from the docking bay. "Understood, Pioneer," came the reply. "You will be assigned Target Group Gamma. Please proceed to the starting position and await the signal to begin." Morrison guided his ship away from the station and toward the target field. Behind them, the massive alien fleets were also moving into position. The demonstration was about to begin, and the humans were ready to show the galaxy what human engineering could really do. The aliens were still laughing and making jokes about the small, ugly ship that looked like it might fall apart at any moment. They had no idea that they were about to witness something that would change their understanding of warfare forever. The great crystal towers of Nexus Prime sparkled under the light of 3 suns. Ships from across the galaxy filled the massive orbital stations that surrounded the planet. Today was the day of the annual military demonstration, where the most powerful alien races would show off their best warships and weapons. Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Annihilator's Wrath. The massive ship was over 2 miles long and painted in the dark purple colors of the Vorthak Empire. Its hull was covered with weapons that could destroy entire planets. Zektar looked out at the other ships gathering for the demonstration and smiled. His ship was clearly the most powerful one here. "Admiral, the humans have arrived," his aide reported. Zektar turned to look at the view screen. A small, ugly ship was slowly approaching the station. It looked like someone had built it from spare parts and scrap metal. The hull was covered in burn marks and patches. Some parts of the ship seemed to be held together with metal tape. "That is their warship?" Zektar laughed. "It looks like a garbage scow." On the other side of the station, Commander Thys of the Crystalline Hegemony was also watching the human ship arrive. Her fleet of 30 vessels floated nearby like ghostly shadows. The crystalline ships could phase in and out of normal space, allowing them to attack from multiple dimensions at once. "How embarrassing for them," Thys said to her officers. "They should have stayed home rather than bring that piece of junk here." The human ship docked at the station with a loud clang that echoed through the metal corridors. Steam hissed from several vents on the ship's hull. A section of the outer plating fell off and crashed to the docking bay floor. Captain Jake Morrison stepped out of the airlock, followed by his small crew. He was a tall man with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. Behind him came Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, a young woman with grease stains on her uniform from working in the engine room. Dr. Peter Hayes walked next to her, carrying a briefcase full of technical data about their ship. Commander Lisa Parker brought up the rear, her hand resting on the weapon at her side. The docking bay was filled with alien delegates who had come to see the human ship up close. Most of them were trying not to laugh. A few were taking pictures to show their friends back home. Ambassador Veltar of the Hegemony approached the human group. He was 8 feet tall with silver skin that reflected the station's lights. His voice was smooth but filled with barely hidden amusement. "Welcome to Nexus Prime, humans," Veltar said. "We are honored that you have chosen to participate in our demonstration. Though I must ask, are you certain that vessel is space-worthy? It appears to be in some distress." Captain Morrison looked back at his ship. More steam was coming from the vents, and a piece of antenna had just fallen off. "The Pioneer has brought us safely across the galaxy, Ambassador. She may not look like much, but she gets the job done." "I see," Veltar replied, struggling to keep a straight face. "And what exactly does your ship do? Besides stay in one piece, I hope." "We'll be happy to demonstrate during the exercises," Morrison said calmly. Admiral Zekatar had come down from his ship to see the humans for himself. He towered over Morrison, his purple skin covered in battle scars. "Human, you cannot be serious about bringing that wreck into combat exercises with real warships. Someone could get hurt." "We appreciate your concern," Rodriguez said, stepping forward. "But we've run plenty of tests on our systems. Everything works fine." Zektar looked at the young engineer and shook his massive head. "Child, my ship carries quantum torpedoes that can crack planets in half. Commander Thys has vessels that can attack from other dimensions. What could your little patrol boat possibly contribute to galactic defense?" "You might be surprised," Hayes said quietly, adjusting his glasses. This made several of the alien delegates burst into laughter. A group of insectoid warriors from the Hive Collective clicked their mandibles in what passed for amusement among their species. "Surprised?" one of them buzzed. "The only surprise would be if that ship made it through the first 5 minutes of combat." Parker's hand tightened on her weapon, but Morrison placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Easy, Lisa. Let them talk." The demonstration was scheduled to begin in 2 hours. The alien fleets would show off their capabilities by destroying old asteroids and derelict ships that had been set up as targets. Points would be awarded for speed, accuracy, and the impressiveness of the destruction. As the humans walked through the station toward the briefing room, they could hear the aliens talking and laughing behind them. Words like primitive, hopeless, and embarrassing followed them down the corridors. "This is worse than I expected," Rodriguez whispered to Hayes. "They're not taking us seriously at all." "Good," Hayes replied. "That's exactly what we want." In the briefing room, holographic displays showed the target field where the demonstration would take place. Dozens of old ships and large asteroids floated in space, waiting to be destroyed. The alien commanders discussed their strategies with confidence and pride. "The Vorthak fleet will demonstrate the power of our new quantum torpedo arrays," Zektar announced. "We will completely vaporize target group Alpha in under 30 seconds. "Impressive," Thais said. "The crystalline hegemony will show our dimensional strike capabilities by attacking target group Beta from 17 different angles simultaneously." Other alien commanders described their plans to use plasma cannons, gravity bombs, and exotic energy weapons. Each species tried to outdo the others with promises of spectacular destruction. When it came time for the humans to present their strategy, Morrison stood up slowly. "The Pioneer will engage target group Gamma using conventional tactics." The room fell silent for a moment, then erupted in laughter. "Conventional tactics?" Veltar gasped between laughs. "What does that even mean? Are you going to ram the targets?" "We have a few tricks up our sleeves," Morrison said with a slight smile. "I'm sure you do," Zektar said, wiping tears from his eyes. "Perhaps you could polish them to death." The laughter continued as the briefing ended. The alien delegates filed out of the room, still making jokes about the human ship and its crew. Several of them placed bets on how quickly the Pioneer would be forced to retreat once the exercises began. Morrison and his crew remained in the briefing room after the aliens had left. Rodriguez looked frustrated, but Hayes seemed pleased with how things had gone. "They think we're a joke," Parker said. "Perfect," Morrison replied. "The less they expect from us, the better this is going to work." Through the briefing room's windows, they could see their ship in the docking bay. It still looked like a piece of junk held together with hope and determination. Steam continued to leak from various parts of the hull, and maintenance robots were trying to reattach the fallen antenna. But hidden beneath that rough exterior was something the aliens couldn't see or understand, something that would soon change. Everything they thought they knew about human engineering and warfare. The demonstration was about to begin. 3 months after the battle, Captain Laura Phillips stood on the bridge of the UHS Reaper as it approached the Hegemony home system. The ship looked different now, painted in the blue and white colors of Earth instead of the flat black it had worn during the war. Humanity was no longer hiding in the shadows. The Reaper was leading a small fleet of human ships on the first diplomatic mission to the alien capital. What had once been humanity's greatest secret was now flying openly through space, carrying Earth's terms for peace to the beings who had tried to enslave them. "Captain," reported her navigation officer, "we're being scanned by multiple hegemony vessels. They're keeping their distance but tracking our every move." Phillips was not surprised. The aliens were probably still trying to figure out how a primitive species had managed to defeat their most powerful fleet. The victory at Earth had shaken the hegemony's confidence in ways that 300 years of easy conquests had never prepared them for. On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of Terra Station, which was now the headquarters of humanity's new Space Defense Command. The secret facilities that had once hidden the Black Armada were being converted into open military bases, and new ships were being built to protect Earth and its growing list of allies. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Amy Johnson, who had been promoted after the battle, "we're receiving reports from our scout ships. 6 more species have declared independence from the hegemony in the past month." Morrison smiled as he read the reports. News of humanity's victory had spread across the galaxy, faster than anyone had expected. Species that had lived under alien rule for centuries were suddenly finding the courage to fight for their freedom. The battle at Earth had done more than save one planet. It had shown the entire galaxy that the hegemony could be beaten. Dr. Kevin Walsh was working in his new laboratory on Luna, developing even more advanced weapons for humanity's growing fleet. The quantum torpedoes and particle beam cannons that had won the first battle were already being improved. Walsh knew that the aliens would be studying the wreckage of their ships, trying to understand human technology so they could defend against it. "Doctor," said his assistant, Dr. Jennifer Mills, "the new antimatter warheads are ready for testing. Each one has 10 times the destructive power of the weapons we used against the hegemony fleet." Walsh nodded with satisfaction. Humanity had learned an important lesson from their first contact with aliens. In a galaxy full of hostile species, being strong was the only way to stay free. The Hegemony Council met in emergency session on their crystal world of Vorth-On. The 12 species that ruled the galaxy sat in their floating chairs, discussing the disaster that had befallen their fleet at Earth. Never before had a single species caused such damage to their forces. High Counselor Yeth Moran, leader of the eldest species in the hegemony, spoke in the harmonic language that all council members shared. "The humans have disrupted the natural order. Their victory has inspired rebellion across our territories." "Then we must send a larger fleet," suggested Counselor Zarthek. 1,000 ships, 10,000 if necessary. We will turn their world to ash." But Yethmaran was older and wiser than his colleague. "And if they defeat that fleet as well? How many more species will rise against us? No, the humans have changed the balance of power in this galaxy. We must adapt or face the collapse of everything we have built." Captain Ryan Brooks commanded the new UHS Enterprise, the first ship built openly using technology from the Black Armada project. His vessel was twice the size of the original Vengeance and carried weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Brooks was leading humanity's expansion into the Outer Rim, establishing bases and making contact with species that wanted protection from the hegemony. "Captain," reported his first officer, "we're receiving a distress signal from the Kethari system. Their colony is under attack by hegemony forces." Brooks did not hesitate. "Set course for Kethari maximum speed. Signal the fleet to follow us." Within hours, 6 human warships dropped out of hyperspace near the embattled colony world. The hegemony ships that had been bombarding the planet's cities quickly found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered by humanity's advanced vessels. The brief battle ended with 3 alien ships destroyed and the rest fleeing toward hegemony space. The Kethari colonists, a peaceful species of farmers and traders, welcomed their human rescuers with joy and gratitude. Dr. Lisa Carter watched the reports from her new office in Geneva, where she had been appointed as Earth's first director of galactic affairs. Project Nightfall was officially over, its secret work now part of humanity's open space program. Carter's new job was to coordinate Earth's relationships with the growing number of species that wanted to join what was becoming known as the Terran Alliance. "Director," said her aide, "we've received formal requests for protection from 15 more systems this week. Species that have never spoken to humans before are asking us to help them break free from hegemony control." Carter reviewed the requests with a mixture of pride and concern. Humanity had wanted to be left alone, but the galaxy was not going to allow that. Earth's victory had made them the leaders of a rebellion they had never intended to start. The UHS Reaper arrived at the hegemony capital after a journey of several weeks. Captain Phillips looked out at the massive crystal structures that orbited the alien homeworld, wondering if the beings inside those buildings were planning another war or finally ready to talk peace. "Captain," her communication officer announced, "we're being hailed by the Hegemony Council. They want to negotiate." Phillips straightened her uniform and walked to the main view screen. When the image appeared, she found herself looking at 12 very different alien beings, all of them staring at her with expressions she could not read. "I am Captain Laura Phillips of the Terran Defense Force," she said formally. "I carry a message from the people of Earth." High Counselor Yethmaran spoke for the group. "We will hear your terms, human." Phillips activated a data pad and began to read. "First, the hegemony will recognize Earth's independence and sovereignty. Second, all species currently under hegemony control will be given the choice to remain or join the Terran Alliance. Third, any attack on human ships or colonies will be considered an act of war." The aliens listened in silence as Phillips continued reading Earth's demands. When she finished, Yethmaran was quiet for a long moment. "These terms are acceptable," he said finally. "The Hegemony Council agrees to your conditions." Phillips felt a surge of triumph. Humanity had not only won their freedom, they had fundamentally changed how the galaxy worked. No longer would strong species be able to simply conquer weaker ones. The Terran Alliance would make sure of that. Admiral Morrison stood in his office on Terra Station, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed distant and threatening. Earth's children were spreading across the galaxy, carrying with them the human ideals of freedom and self-determination. The aliens had ordered Earth to kneel. Instead, humanity had stood up and changed the galaxy forever. Captain Ryan Brooks had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. He stood on the bridge of the UHS Vengeance, a ship that, according to all official records, did not exist. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, checking weapons and engines that no one on Earth was supposed to know about. The Vengeance was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. For 3 decades, teams of engineers and workers had been carving out secret bases like this one all across the solar system. They worked in shifts, never seeing the full picture, sworn to secrecy about what they were building. "Captain," said his first officer, Lieutenant Kate Wilson, "we're receiving the activation signal from Dr. Carter." Brooks nodded. He had been expecting this call ever since the alien fleet appeared. "Signal all ships in our sector. It's time to wake up." Around the solar system, similar scenes were playing out on 49 other ships. Captain Laura Phillips commanded the UHS Reaper from a base hidden in the rings of Saturn. Commander Alex Turner led a squadron of smaller ships from a facility built into one of Jupiter's moons. Each captain had trained for years, knowing that someday they might have to fight an enemy from the stars. Dr. Kevin Walsh watched from Deep Sight 7, a research station buried 3 miles under the ice of Europa. He was the man who had designed most of the weapons that the Black Armada carried. For 30 years, he had worked in secret, developing technology that could fight enemies with superior science. "All ships report ready," Walsh said into his communicator. "Captains, you are cleared to begin Phase 1. The Black Armada had been humanity's greatest secret. While the world's governments publicly said that Earth only had basic space defenses, teams of the best engineers had been working on something much more advanced. They had studied every piece of alien technology that had ever crashed on Earth. They had built weapons that pushed the limits of human science. Captain Brooks looked at his tactical display as the Vengeance powered up its engines. The ship was painted completely black and covered with materials that absorbed light and radar. To most sensors, it was invisible, but when it wanted to be seen, it carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. "Weapon status," Brooks called out. "All systems green, Captain," reported his weapons officer, Sergeant Dan Parker. "Main cannon is charged and ready. Torpedo tubes loaded with quantum warheads." Brooks smiled. The quantum torpedoes were Dr. Walsh's masterpiece. Each one contained a tiny artificial black hole that would tear apart anything it hit. The alien ships were big and strong, but Brooks doubted they had ever faced weapons like these. On the other side of the solar system, Captain Phillips was bringing the Reaper online. Her ship was even more advanced than the Vengeance, built around an experimental reactor that drew power from controlled antimatter reactions. The energy output was enormous, enough to power weapons that could burn through almost any defense. "How long until we're in position?" Phillips asked her navigator. 2 hours, Captain. We'll come up behind their main fleet and hit them where they don't expect it." Phillips had studied the alien formation for hours. The enemy ships were arranged in a pattern that showed they expected any attack to come from Earth. They had positioned their strongest vessels facing the planet, leaving their rear areas less protected. It was a mistake that Phillips intended to make them regret. Dr. Walsh continued to monitor all 50 ships from his command center under Europa's ice. Each vessel was equipped with weapons and defenses that had never been tested in real combat. The theory was sound, but theory and practice were different things. "Captain Brooks," Walsh said over the communication system, "you'll be leading the first attack. Your target is the enemy cruiser on the edge of their formation." "Understood, Doctor. What kind of resistance should we expect?" "Unknown. We've never fought ships like these before. But remember, they don't know we exist. Surprise will be our biggest advantage." The Vengeance moved silently through space, its black hull invisible against the darkness. Brooks had chosen his crew carefully over the years. Every person on his ship was a volunteer who understood that they might be fighting to save humanity itself. "Captain," said Lieutenant Wilson, "we're picking up communications from the alien fleet. They're still demanding that Earth surrender." Brooks felt anger burning in his chest. The aliens thought humans were weak and primitive. They believed that a show of force would be enough to make Earth give up without a fight. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Commander Turner was moving his fighter squadron into position near the moon. His ships were smaller than the main vessels of the Black Armada, but they were fast and hard to detect. Turner's job was to hit the alien fleet support ships, while the bigger vessels attacked their main battle line. "All fighters, this is Turner," he said over the squadron frequency. "Remember your training. Hit fast, hit hard, and get out before they know what happened." His pilots were all experienced, but none of them had ever fought aliens before. Turner hoped that their training would be enough. The enemy ships were big and powerful, but Turner's fighters carried weapons that could punch through heavy armor. Dr. Carter watched the deployment from her command center on the dark side of the moon. Project Nightfall had been her life's work, and now it was time to see if all those years of preparation had been worth it. "All ships report ready for combat," she announced to Admiral Morrison on Terra Station. "The Black Armada is in position." Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the alien fleet surrounding Earth. In a few hours, those ships would discover that humanity was not as helpless as they appeared. Hidden in the darkness of space, 50 warships waited to strike. "Captain Brooks," Morrison said over the secured channel, "you are authorized to engage the enemy." Brooks felt a thrill of anticipation as he gave the order to his crew. "All stations, prepare for combat. Today we show these aliens what happens when they threaten our home." The Vengeance began its attack run, moving toward the alien fleet like a ghost in the night. Behind it, 49 other ships prepared to follow. The aliens had demanded that humanity kneel in surrender. Instead, they were about to face the Black Armada, and humanity's answer would be written in fire across the stars.